Welcome to this webinar. This is the 7th, I believe, that we've run now over the last 2.5 years. And although not everybody's joined yet, and some people won't because they're in other parts of the world, they'll have to watch the recording. This one has actually had far more people sign up than anything before. I think we're up to about 130. So we are delighted that so many people are interested. Delighted that we've got 3 very good and very different presentations for you today. I just thought I'd better say a little bit about the EAL Quality Mark to start off with. And just to say, questions, just put them in the chat and we'll try and deal with them all at the end. And if we can't, we'll get back to you with answers. So the EAL Quality Mark, it's a self-assessment tool that sort of started by accident, because the EAL Academy was doing a big piece of work with a local authority, which had lots of schools in it that were very good at EAL and several that weren't very good at all. The problem was nobody in the authority knew which was which. So we had to devise a formal mechanism to say who was good and who was trying hard and who actually needed quite a lot of help. So that's how it started. And we deliberately designed it as a self-assessment tool rather than someone coming and doing it to you. It now has versions for UK schools, which predominantly means English schools, and there's a slightly different international school version because some things are a bit different. It has 3 sections: leadership and management, teaching and learning, parents and community. There are 22 criteria in total. We used to have 24 and we've reduced it, and they're at bronze, silver and gold level. And you need to get 16 at gold to get a gold award. We give you about a year to try and work through it and judge yourself. And then we send an assessor to visit you, who will talk to staff, parents, to pupils. We'll go on a learning walk. We'll look at the self-assessment evidence you provided, and we'll make a decision. You might not get the decision on the day. Sometimes we need to check with colleagues what they think. You get a decision, and you'll get feedback on what's really good. And if it's really good, you'll get invited to one of these sessions to speak, and also feedback on how you can improve on the things that maybe aren't yet at gold standard. You get a certificate, a logo for your website. If you get the gold award, we definitely blog about you. But today we've got, I think we have actually blogged about everybody today, but one of the schools today doesn't have a gold award, but we thought some of the things they were doing were so good, we needed to write about them and let other people know it was possible. So that's what the EAL Quality Mark is. And we're going to start with Sara Beddoes, who is a history teacher in the international section of the Lycée Sainte Anne, Brest. I'm going to, while Sarah's introducing herself, and saying a bit about what an international section is, because not everybody knows. I hope she's going to say a bit about why the school chose to do the EAL Quality Mark and what they got out of it. By the time she's done that, the slides will be up and we can start her presentation. Okay, over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Well, as Graham says, I'm a history teacher and I work in a lycée and college in Brest in France. And the international section is something that is quite popular in French schools. Not every school has one, but essentially it's a section where students can have 6 extra hours of tuition in a second language. So in my school, it's British, or English rather, it's a British section. There are schools, I think in Paris, Saint-Germain-en-Laye has 14 sections. So they do a variety of different languages. And the idea is just to sort of develop the language, in this case English, through 4 hours of language and literature and 2 hours of history and geography, which students do over and above their ordinary timetable. Many of our students are, well, all of our students are French nationals. Some of our students have lived abroad for a short period of time because Brest is a naval city, so they may have had a little bit of time living overseas. But generally, most of them are French as a first language. They may have other languages that they speak at home, but English, they may have maybe a few students with an English-speaking parent, but on the whole, they're French through and through. So my journey to the EAL was really by accident. I was struggling in my early years of balancing the teaching of history with the language, not quite getting the balance right, especially with the younger students. I'd looked at content and language integrating learning, or CLIL, and found, you know, that had got some ideas, but it really wasn't what I was after. And when I went to a meeting in Paris, subject meeting, Graham was there working with one of the prestigious schools in Paris, and he did a workshop, and it was really was a light bulb moment. Everything just made so much sense. And when I went back to Brest, I came a little bit evangelical about it, and it really has informed my teaching. It's really brought the students on, and it's just made everything fall into place, particularly with the younger students. So we were delighted when Graham visited us earlier this year, and we achieved the Gold Award. We're really thrilled with that. And as I've said to Graham, you know, for me, this is just the start of the journey rather than the end of it. Okay, so today I'm going to speak on how an emphasis on speaking and listening leads to high levels of literacy. And for me, I think listening is a very underrated skill, one that is really difficult for students, I think, because it happens in real time. If they're reading, you know, they can go back if they've missed a chunk, and they can tend to get the meaning from the context, or they can get the gist of it. Talking, again, once the student runs out of words, they stop. Whereas with listening, you know, it's very demanding. And so for me, listening is very important, because by the time the students get to years 12 and 13, because of the constraints of time, most of my lessons tend to be lectures, and they need to have those skills. Okay, so this is what we're going to look at, or I'm going to go through today. So for me in college, it's about getting the students to listen in short bursts, to speak in short bursts, and to try and give control to the students as quickly as possible, to break down the cognitive load that listening requires. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the preparation for this particular lesson that I'm going to use as an example today, we prepare and break it down into big ideas, into smaller ideas. And the textbook that we use is an English textbook. It corresponds quite nicely with the French curriculum, and it's cheap enough for the students to have their own copy. So it's authentic reading text. So by using the textbook and the worksheet, we start to sort of build up their knowledge and start to guide the students in the direction that we really want them to go. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? So this is a copy of the book that we use. The language can be a little bit tricky at times for international students, and we have to break it down and take that into consideration. But the lesson that we're focusing on today was just a small chunk of this, which is marked in the pink here, and it's the Schlieffen Plan, which was part of the early stages of the First World War. So this is kind of the knowledge part of the lesson, so the students may have read that for homework, and we will have gone through the language and a little bit in class before we start writing and talking. Okay, next slide, please. So the Schlieffen Plan, this is their first lesson, and it starts off quite simple. The students can just really lift information from the text and put it in these boxes, particularly the top 3 boxes, very simple. What was the Schlieffen Plan? What did the Germans plan to do first and why? And what were they planning on to do next? The bottom tier of questions require a little bit more thought. Sort of what evidence is there that the Schlieffen Plan failed? And they called upon to make judgments as well. So there's a simple lead-in on the top level, and then it gets a little bit more complicated or complex on the bottom. But by the time they've done that, they're really ready for the next stages. I also asked them to colour in the part of the jigsaw that they think is the most important or significant. And again, this is calling on the students to make a judgment on their own, and they won't really get that from the book. This is where they have to kind of think and process the information and then justify it where I've written because on the text there. Okay, so having done that, which might have taken a lesson to discuss it and go through it, we then move on to the next stage. If I could have the next slide, please. So how do we do stuff? Well, turn and talk, use that in every single lesson. Pair work just enables the weaker students to talk more confidently in a safe environment. You know, not everybody wants to put their hand up. Collaborative work, again, I tend to do this by ability because I find that there are always those who will take advantage of group work to hide or not to do as much work as they should be doing. And again, translanguaging, and I'm very fortunate in that because all the students speak French, it makes it very, very easy for them to do that. So that is a definite advantage, but it just helps students to get their ideas down first. And once they've got it, we can then start refining it in English. So collaborative work, pair work, and translanguaging is really, really important. Could I have the next slide, please? And again, before we get students to really develop big ideas, I'd like them to do the front the writing, which is a Lemov idea, and it gets them to put something down in writing before they feed back to the rest of the class. And again, this helps the confident and less confident speakers alike. You know, they've got a script that they can refer to if they need to. So if I can just have the next slide, which should show, yeah, here we go, the group work. So I love using political cartoons in history. I'm aware that they're very culturally loaded, and obviously some of them are very old as well. So this one here actually refers to the Schlieffen Plan. However, it's not evident without that prior knowledge. Now, the questions I've put around the side of the cartoon are a little bit more detailed, and it's just to kind of show you the kind of questions that we ask. I would probably break this down into maybe 4 or 5 boxes in a lesson, but this is just to give you an indication of the type of analysis that the students will be doing. At the side, at the bottom, I've put the useful vocabulary, which is in French, just to help them with the more tricky elements of the language that are there. And they will work in small groups, 3 or 4, and try and work out answers to these questions. So they're analysing it, they're going around the cartoon, and they're talking in French, English, mixture of the two. I really don't mind, and just filling in these ideas. At the end of the process, we'll come back together, we'll discuss it. Obviously, the students can refer to what they have written down here, and I will use a projector or a visualizer to try and hone in on samples of students' work where we can give immediate feedback and discuss different interesting ideas and elements. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? Oh, that is the end of the, okay, sorry, I thought there was another one. So at the end of that, after we've looked at the visualizer, we will discuss it, and we will perhaps follow that up with homework where the students might condense what they've analysed into a paragraph or 1 or 2 paragraphs to try and put it in the right tense, use the right tenses, and just to formalise it into a piece of individual writing. But for everything like that, there's plenty of talking going on, plenty of time for the students to process the information at their own pace before we get together and discuss it as a class, and then we move on to the writing.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Okay.
That's really good. Can I just add something to it? When I do a quality mark visit, and I did happen to do this one, I always ask a group of students what they think the best thing is about the school. And one of your students used a phrase which I now keep quoting at people when I'm doing training. He said, the thing is, they really understand our teachers in the international section. They really understand that you can't actually read and write in a language until you can speak it. And it's a bit of the blindingly obvious, but sometimes I see people giving pupils who can't speak English written tasks to do in English, and I just see what they're going to be able to achieve. So that emphasis on speaking and listening is really very important and absolutely appropriate. So I'm now going to hand over, and I'm going to say thank you again to Sarah first, because I thought it was really good, and I really enjoyed my morning in your school. To Chiaka, who is going to introduce our next speaker. You need to unmute, Chiaka.
Sorry, forgot to unmute there. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chiaka Amadi, and I'm one of the associates at the EAL Academy. And I'm very pleased to introduce this afternoon Tracy Wilson. Tracy has been someone that we've worked with over a number of years now. First of all, in her capacity as EAL lead teacher in her own school, where she used the self-assessment tool, which is the quality mark, to evaluate the work that her school was doing with the pupils who were learners of English as an additional language. And I was very pleased to go along and award her gold status. But subsequent to that, Tracy has done quite a lot of work across her local authority, helping other schools in Bedford to also improve their EAL provision and to work, some of them to work also towards a quality mark. Because Tracy had been doing this for, I think it was about 4 years at the time, we felt it was time for her to reevaluate the work that she was doing. And so with a very slightly different set of criteria, and also focusing in on a couple of particular areas that she had been hoping to develop, we went back and looked at Tracy's work and were very pleased in order to be able to congratulate her and present her with a re-accreditation also at gold level. So without saying any more than that, our sort of double gold winner, Tracy Wilson, I'll hand over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Shaka, and lovely to see you again. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start sharing my screen shortly. So as Shaka quite rightly said, I have been working with the local authority, which is the school improvement team. It should have been a 1-year secondment. It's now into its 7th year. So, you know, things are improving. We still have a long way to go, but we're getting there. And it's changed, the structure has changed. So I'm now also a licensed Bell Foundation licensed practitioner. So I'm also offering training, delivering training across the borough as well, which is very useful for schools. And I'm also an EAL specialist lead for the children teaching school in Bedfordshire. So I've been in this game for a very long time now, and as time has gone on, the developments are still coming. You know, EAL doesn't change very much, as you all know, but what we do can make a massive difference. So my thinking is always to remain passionate. Sarah, I really enjoyed your presentation. I found it really exciting. It's nice to hear and see a different way of working. So yeah, it's about passion. For me, it's all about the passion and continuing the journey with the new knowledge that we gain, and that's by sharing practice. And today, by listening to Sarah's presentation, I've gathered some new information and possibly a new way of working. So yeah, so let's go to, I'm going to look at developing oracy. Right. Hopefully everyone can see that. No, so let's escape that. Let's zoom, right. I'm going to start sharing if I can. Right, start sharing. Here we go. Okay, can we see that screen? Can you see my screen? Just thumbs up's great, lovely, fantastic. Okay. So our school context, I haven't put no animation in, I've just realized that on this last minute today. So school context, so we are a very large primary school based in Bedford, very, very culturally diverse. We have a high percentage of EAL learners, 30% at the moment, so that's above national. Minority ethnic group, there's 48% of pupils here and 37 different languages spoken at home. So here we have we're looking at oracy today and the main components. So as we know, there's 3 main components to this area. So there's language structures, vocabulary, dialogue, and these are the areas that we focus on, and we're looking at listening as well, the importance of listening. Sarah was talking about that in her presentation. So things that we need to consider for our EAL learners is that because our English language is not pronounced as it is written or written as it's pronounced, these sometimes can become a difficulty for the children to grasp the concept of new letters and sounds and understanding the principles of phonics. So it's really important that we're listening to what the children are saying, how they are saying things. Right, so within our school, the way we develop oracy for our new arrivals, so absolute beginners to pre-intermediate level, We look at assessing their proficiency in English, and we look at identifying the language needs of that particular pupil. Now, how we do that, we use an assessment framework. It's not the English DFE English proficiency scales. We used to do that, like most schools in the country had to do that, but we don't use that. We use an assessment framework that's designed specifically for EAL learners. So we look at that, and then we say, okay, we say there's step 1 here. This is what we need to do in order to develop these skills. And within this framework, which is the NASI framework, they will have recommendations for the different steps that the pupil is at. So we not only do we develop for our new arrivals the social, but we also develop the academic language as well. And this is all through planned activities. We provide opportunities for our learners to practice speaking, rehearsing the targeted language. And again, that's through all the planned sort of talking, listening activities. We encourage our learners to talk about their idea through questioning. So lots of open questions, why, how, when, and then sort of rephrasing, modeling to develop that understanding of language structure. We use lots of role play, and that helps them to communicate their ideas by speaking in different social contexts and in different social roles. So whether it's for a rehearsal of a play, or we're at the shops, at the doctors, that sort of thing, it's all there. We give our learners, really importantly, time to think before they respond. Because remember, our focus today, for me, is looking at absolute beginners to pre-intermediate. We create a safe space for them to have a go. So, it's that sort of environment where don't be afraid, no answer is wrong. And we're here to help each other, and it's a real supportive environment, and it builds confidence very quickly. Confidence, I think, sometimes is underestimated, of the importance of the role that plays with our new arrivals. So we're very proud of our provision, because it is a very stimulating, calm, relaxing, and inviting environment. So this again supports these areas of development, especially for communication. So we encourage our children to use their first language, as Sarah said about the translanguaging, to support their literacy skills in additional language. It's all about making that connection, isn't it? When they're using using their home language, and then we're providing the translation of that. It's making that connection. And so they're making sense of the world, and actually making sense of what you're asking them to do, as Graham said about asking new arrivals to do some written tasks. It's absolutely ridiculous. So the importance of using the first language is very useful for those students and for the teacher. Okay, the tools and resources we use, mainly our main tool is the Learning Village program, and I'm sure most of you in the room today will be familiar with this program. It's an online blended learning program. It has 3 strands. It has the curriculum, phonics, and the social English. Over the years, I don't know how I did without this program. It's absolutely outstanding in terms of supporting new arrivals. It just accelerates progress very, very quickly. It enables you to link it with the curriculum. It provides a key vocabulary, the language structure. There's so many ways that you can use it. There's ready-made resources that you can download. You have all the different activities, the closed procedure, barrier gates. There's so much that you can use to develop these children. So basically how it works, it's really sort of child friendly. The images are presented. They have to listen to the text, pronounce the word. Then they do these practice sessions by sort of filling in the gap, listening to words, to identify, match it to that particular image. Then they have to sort of match the image to the sentence, and then what that does, then it starts identifying the gaps in that child's learning, because every week the Learning Village leader will receive a progress report, and through those reports you can identify if that child has clearly understood the learning intention there, or if they've just about made the pass mark, which is normally about 75%. You can obviously you know, customize it to your needs. My pass mark now is 95%. 75 was, it's good, but you want to really sort of challenge your learners. So yeah, so there's lots of this program, as I say, it's a very, very good program, and it's really worth inquiring about if you don't use it for that. And that would be for international students as well, because I know it's used internationally. We also have our own scheme of work, English, social English scheme of work that I developed many moons ago. We still use it. We look at the topic area, the basic key vocabulary, language structure, examples of words to be taught. Board games, love the board games. They love the board games. It creates a nice, relaxed environment. They don't feel so stressed about having to explain everything. It's sort of one word, simple phrases, that sort of thing. But through that, they're learning to turn take. They're having to listen. They're forced to speak. So yeah, so that's our main resources, and the main tool is the Learning Village at this time of our provision. Cultural differences. So here's a statement I found a long time ago. It says cultural diversity is important because our country workplaces schools are increasingly, I can't even see that now, increasingly consist of various cultures, racial and ethnic groups. We can learn from one another, but first we must have a level of understanding about each other in order to facilitate collaboration and cooperation. So yeah, that kind of stuck with me over the years. It's really important. We talk a lot about cultural differences, cultural diversity, but actually sometimes is it more than just words or these buzzwords that go around, you know, establishments, whether it's the government or whether it's our school environments. So in order to really say, are we part of this change? Are we really going to make a difference? Schools have to action what these statements really mean. So here, we've, as a school, I mean, again, we worked on this for a number of years, diversifying the curriculum and celebrating our school community. Now, celebrating the school community is quite simple. It was diversifying the curriculum. This is something that you have to be very creative with. You have to be able to incorporate it already to what's available within the curriculum. You don't want to see it as a bolt-on, you want to see it as something that's really included, embedded, and it becomes, you know, a sort of thread that weaves through the school. So you'll see it across the school being taught without any real sort of reference to, oh, this is a Black astronaut. Naturally, we will have a Black astronaut. Naturally, we will have, you know, Black Asian authors, that sort of thing. So first of all, we looked at, in terms of changing our curriculum, we looked at our school community. Who do we serve? So we looked at that, and then as an SLT, we looked at, we sort of developed a working party, and we explored areas of the curriculum that lent itself to becoming more culturally inclusive. It was more simpler than we imagined it to be. There are lots of materials out there to support you with this journey, but it was something as simple as Year 6, I don't know, learning World War II. It's quite easy to link other ethnic groups in that achievement. So part of the lesson, whether it be memoirs of, say, you know, Black pilots or something, they were shared. It was the displays that were put up. It was, you know, representing all the different ethnic groups that contributed to that achievement for Great Britain. Looking at the Victorians, bringing in Dr. Bernardo, the role that he played in the orphan girls back in the Victorian time, the Black orphan girls. You know, it was quite simple to make that curriculum more culturally inclusive. And then we looked at school assemblies. How could we, without making it explicitly that, oh, we're looking at this, not unless it was Black History Month or something, but ways that we could bring that in, even by the books that were being shared with the children, you know, depicting different authors. We purchased a lot of beautiful high quality resources. So that was supporting each classroom in their book corners. So real true representation of all the children that we served, dual language books, different authors, you know, different gender, everything was there. So that was a big investment for us, and we're very pleased that we've been able to do that. Racism and discrimination workshops, we obviously bring in qualified consultants to deliver those workshops for our pupils. Really interesting sort of discussions that are generated from that, and you know, the assumptions that children make are addressed. They're understanding the real definition of racism. Quite often they say, "Oh, he's been racist to me." Well, what did he say? He said your eyes are blue. So you know, now we're quite pleased to say that our children, if we said to them, you know, what's the definition of racism, they would be able to tell us. That would be our lower and upper key stage 2 children, because they've been taught. And over the time, we've incorporated that again into our PSHE lessons, etc. Staff, again, most important in that staff, because they can also feel very uncomfortable around these discussions, these situations, recording, you know, but actually, was that racist? Well, he doesn't really mean it. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the Equality Act says that these are the characteristics that are protected. And yes, he referred to the color of that person's skin or that child's belief, religion. So yes, it would be classified as racist, right? Okay, so, and we really explored about cultural differences to understand children's behaviors within school, and possibly how it could be connected to the cultural differences. We done the pupil conferencing to measure the impact on some of the way the lessons had changed, and we're very lucky to say that they were very pleased, and you know, they wanted that journey to continue. They felt happy that they were, you know, lots of children that were being represented within the curriculum. They could see their, you know, people from their ethnic groups were being depicted in stories, in slideshows, that sort of thing. So that was that. So now that's all embedded. It's really good work for everybody. Celebrating and learn together. That's a journey that we continue on in education. So we had this, well, we have this whole school heritage bag project. There's our little heritage bag on the slide here. So we had those printed up. Inside those, you'll have prompts. The prompts are mainly connected to history, geography, PSHE, and RE. So within those prompts, it might ask you to tell us about any sort of religious festivals that you observe. It might be, can you tell me what countries your families are from? That sort of thing. It's all about a child's heritage and their culture. So that's then taken home once a week by a different child, and then they do show and tell. And then we have a whole section on our website that's celebrated on as well, and through Twitter accounts as well. Whole school displays. Shaka's been to our school. I'm sure she can vouch for us. Our school is full of displays that are culturally inclusive, reference to inspirational people, artwork from around the world, that sort of thing. We have a cultural day, multicultural week. That's an annual event for us. It's been for a number of years. Really great. We travel around the world. Most schools do this, I'm sure. This year, our cultural day, the theme is carnival. So the children will have workshops all morning. In the afternoon, we open the gates to the parents. Everyone, we have a carnival king, queen. They will parade around the school grounds, and all the children will join in with their headdresses, masks. There'll be live steel pans, news, food on sale, because we're fundraising for our school in Ghana. So yeah, a really nice whole school community event. And obviously, along with every other school in the country, we celebrate Black History Month. Over the years, that's become less and less a prominent sort of feature in our school because of our curriculum's change now. So yes, we enhance it by having visiting artists, that sort of thing, but nowhere as much as we used to, because it was almost becoming like a cultural day, cultural week, that type of thing. So now it's sort of more low key, but we do still celebrate those achievements of all African Caribbeans that are contributed to society. We work with an extension. I'm in partnership with the retired Caribbean nurses. Again, that's a really sort of useful project for us to look at as a local project. So working with them, I'm developing an educational resource for them that's going to be archived in the Bedford Luton University. Persona dolls, if you've heard of them, and if you haven't, they're wonderful. Great ways of tackling discrimination, especially in early years. They're sort of life-size dolls, and they have their own persona. You build that persona, and they're lovely. They're there, and the children really, you have to treat them as if they're real. They live in the cupboard. They don't come out in the book corner or in the play area, and they come out and they might say, oh, we might have named her Cassandra. Cassandra, okay, what's your hair? Cassandra tells us all about her father coming from the Caribbean and her mother from the UK, the food that she enjoys. But actually on the playground today, the little girl said something quite horrible to her. Or when they say, what did she say, Cassandra? And then Cassandra said, she said that they didn't like the colour of my skin. And that's a really good way of sort of tackling racism from a very young age, because it happens in early years, They say, I'm not allowed to play with you because you're this colour. So it's a really good way of tackling that. And then the children all sort of come together in empathy. So it's all linked with PSHE, etc., social, SEMC, etc. So BCAP been heading up that's the Black Children's Achievement Programme. It was introduced by National Strategies, I would say, around about 15 years ago. We were a pilot school along with another school in Bedford for 2 years, and we continued with it. It's still fantastic. We started it for a long while now, continued with it. If you look at our school website, you'll see all the productions around the history of rap, Motown. So much has happened. This year we're looking at the history of African Caribbean dance. So the children have just started workshops with these international dancers. So we do the history and the dance formation as well. And we have charities that we're twinned with, that we support. 2 of them, one is in Ghana and one's in Uganda. We're twinned with a school in Ghana, JTR's a primary school. We've been fundraising for a number of years for different things. I visited school on 2 occasions, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time and sort of built a very strong relationship with the school now. The children communicate, and Watoto, Isabella, I think, was 6 when we started to sponsor her. She's now almost completing university and still continues to write to us. So that's some of my ideas, some of our practice here at Goldington Green Academy. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's the first time we had you on, I wondered what more could you do? And now I know you just keep doing more and more. And it gets better.
Yeah.
That's
really nice. Great. It's all about, I think if you don't sort of have the passion and you have to have you have to be creative, it all becomes a little bit too samey every day, and it's very hard to maintain that commitment. So for me, I've been very fortunate. I've had different outlets, so helping others is one of my favorite things to do.
Okay, thanks very much. Our first 2 speakers have had a long time to build and develop the provision, excellent provision that they now have in their schools. And next to Leander and Sal from Smithills Secondary in Bolton, I went to see in March. I think at that point, they had been the EAL coordinators for about 23 working weeks, with very little time each week to do the job, which they'll tell you about. And I was astounded by the difference they had made in such a short time. So I'm now delighted to ask them to tell you how they did it. Leander and Sal.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So yeah, Sal and I are the EAL coordinators at Smithills. Probably about 9 months that we've been in the job, and then we got Silver, which was fantastic. And we're going to talk to you about sort of how we've made such a difference within those 9 months. Because when we came into the role, it really was a case of sort of starting from the bare bones. We had some things in place, but it wasn't shared with other members of staff across the whole school. And so basically, this is what we're going to be talking to you about. So let's just share the screen with you. Can you all see that? Yeah. Thank you. Let me just, there we go. Okay, so this was our headline from the Ofsted report in 2018. When Sal and I were not the EAL coordinators. So one of our main foci was that leaders' actions had not had enough impact on the progress of the INA students amongst other groups.
And it then went on further to say that we needed to provide the right academic support and challenge for these pupils.
So just to give you a little bit of an idea about our cohort, 131 of our students, we've got, I think, 1,113 students, 131 are classed as EAL, so that's 12% of our cohort. Currently, obviously we all know what an INA student is. Some of the INA students are already fluent in English, however, others are in the early stages of their English language learning journey. And we know that they all need support during that transition period. So what we did is we actually asked the staff as a school, what are we doing in our departments to ensure that they can access the curriculum? With opening that question up to the rest of the members of staff in our school, it actually got everyone thinking, made the awareness of the INAs accessing the curriculum sort of one of the top priorities to make sure that they could access everything that everybody else was learning. And we also looked at the fact that some of our INA students were actually missing some data as well. So again, another thing that we did was to make sure that they did the CATS testing so that we could get those raw scores. And then using that, we set reliable targets for them.
So we introduced the banding system in line with the Bell Foundation, and it obviously starts off with A, as you know, which students who are new to English, and then moves all the way down to band E, students who are fluent. So we decided that we wanted to put INA passports together for these students. We focused on A to C because we felt that the teachers, it would give teachers ways in personalising learning for these particular pupils. And we decided to band these passports at the top with colours which represented the band that they were in. So for example, if they were band A, new to English, it was red and so on. Band B, orange, and then yellow for band C. If they had intervention with our intervention leader, that information would be in green, so they'd be aware of exactly what intervention was taking place within the intervention sessions, and they were reviewed. These passports were then reviewed every term, and in case there were any changes in terms of their banding and whether they've moved from band A to B, for example. And then that information has obviously been sent out and shared with subject teachers as well. Something else that we shared with subject teachers is the how-to guide. So basically we put this together just because a lot of the, especially the new staff, the ECTs coming through, when they were faced with a student who came into their class and they didn't have English sort of acquired, then they were almost panicking. And so we said, right, okay, this is what you should kind of expect to see in your classroom from a new to English student. And then we did it by the months, what to expect from the student themselves so that the teacher isn't worried about what the student's doing or not doing.
but then also a couple of tips and hints for what the classroom teacher should do as well. And we sent this out alongside the pupil passport so that they could see sort of what banding the student was, and then kind of what to expect as well for those students who were predominantly band A and band B. On there as well, there's compulsory expectations, but then there's also sort of suggested ones as well. And then we've also explained to the staff that the students with minimal English need to receive personalised learning. It does happen an awful lot across the school, but as you'll probably know, in some of your schools, it doesn't happen all the time by every teacher. So it's making sure that those students were getting that personalised learning, and by using the how-to guide, it sort of gave them a bit more confidence to actually do that. Oh, and obviously using trans-language resources and knowledge organisers and stuff like that have been translated as well within the subject areas.
So at the moment, we've got 580 of our students at EAL, that's 55.9% of our cohort, which obviously is 3 times the national average, which came from our Ofsted report in 2018. Obviously, we needed to make sure that we had something in place for all these pupils. And as a result, we decided that we needed to have something that teachers could refer to by using, you know, personalised resources, and making sure that we are looking at like resources and adapting
Adapting the curriculum.
Yeah, adapting the curriculum to suit these pupils. So we wanted to make sure we were employing quality-based teaching strategies in the classroom. This is something that, you know, we've already started doing, and we want to progress this on further, making sure that all teachers are able to personalise for all the for EAL students, as well as those new English speaking children who are band A to C. So at the moment, what we didn't have anything in place on SIMS for these pupils. So we decided to get the English department to ban these pupils according to the Bell Foundation banding system. So as you can see on the screen, these pupils were banded depending on where the English teacher felt that they were. So this was now on SIMS for teachers to use to be able to personalise within their classrooms. They were also given the Bell Foundation framework so that they could use that alongside the banding system. These are now in colour, so that teachers are aware exactly where this pupil sits in terms of the banding criteria. Routes for INA students were also tailored to each student based on their retrospective skills, scores generated by the CAT scores, to identify what their route flight path would be, rather than a generic 2, 3 or 4 based on their date of entry, which was done in the past. So that's something that we wanted to change as well.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the route system that we use is just basically the MTG, the minimum target grade that we set the students for them to ideally get at GCSE. A little bit of more interesting information about our students. These are the top 10 languages that we've got here at Smithills. There are over 44 different languages. I know it says on there 40, but since we've put this together, we've had a few more students arrive, which is brilliant. We've done loads and loads of things. Yeah. One of the main things that we have done, which has had such a huge success rate and has been massively effective, is we have promoted bilingualism, multilingualism. We've promoted the idea that having another language is a superpower. We have done a video that celebrates International Languages Day, which has been shared with forms. We've now got language ambassadors as well, who represent the school. They help with the buddy system for new students as well. And yeah, it's mainly the main thing that we've really done is we've raised that awareness of EAL students, INA students, and to sort of take away that stigma that, oh my goodness, I've got an EAL student. Oh no, what am I going to do with them? Well, the first thing you look on Sims, see what their language proficiency is, and then go from there. So it's removing those barriers between the teacher and the student, as well as removing those barriers between the students as peers as well, so that they're actually celebrating the fantastic superpowers that our students have got. I think we've done more than that, but that in a nutshell, we've only got 10 minutes, so that's what we've done.
Thank you very much. I did one question I'd like to ask, so people know. I think I know the answer to this, but I can't remember the exact number is. You both are very close to being full-time teachers. You have a little bit of time each week to do this coordination. How much is it that you get?
We get 6 hours a fortnight.
6 hours a fortnight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge difference you've made in a very small amount of time. I mean, my 23 weeks that I said, well, 23 times, if it's 6 hours a fortnight, it's 3 hours a week. So it's actually less than 70 hours. When I came to see you, you managed to make that change in, which I think is really impressive. And as I talked to staff, they were all very clear that they'd been empowered by what you were doing, and that things were changing very, very rapidly. And I'm sure now, nearly 3 months on, you've made a lot more progress.
Yeah, I think they're sick of our emails, to be honest.
Yeah. So, well done.
Thank you.
Now, I can't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody's got a question that they want to ask now, please do raise your hand and do it. If you haven't, we're happy to take questions after. You can email them to us and we will ask the appropriate presenters to try and answer it. So I'm just going to see if anybody wants to ask a question.
Actually,
Okay.
go on, I'll break the silence and ask the question. Ladies, the passport that you've developed for your international new arrivals,
Yeah.
is that based on the Bell Foundation profiling of a student? How have you created that document?
It's very similar to the ones that we have for the SEND pupils.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah, we have taken elements. Go on.
Yeah, so what a section of it is from the Bell Foundation of expected, depending on the language acquisition you're at. But in terms of the structure and the layout, we wanted it to be very similar to it. We have the SEN passports in school, so it's very similar to that. So teachers are not kind of, you know, it makes it easy for them to kind of see.
Something that they're familiar with. They're familiar with that structure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They're familiar with it.
Okay. No, it's very impressive what you guys have done in
you.
a short space of time. It's lovely.
Thank
Really.
you.
Just want to
And
say,
more
I
impressive,
used
you
to live
only
down
have.
the road from Goldington Green.
Sorry?
I used to live down the road from Goldington Green.
Oh, did you? You should have come to visit us. You should come back down and come and see us.
I used to work at Bidnam as well, so yeah.
Ah, okay. Yes, my son's been there. Okay.
Okay. I think that's a good note to end on, because
Graham, Rebecca, just to let you know, there's a couple of questions in the chat if you look quickly.
Okay, so Jessica, question for Leander. Do students receive any one-on-one intervention to help improve their English?
They don't receive one-on-one, but they do receive small group interventions. We have an HLTA4 who does the EAL, the INA interventions. It's 2 to 4 hours a week, and she does it as a program of 12 weeks. There's 4 different subgroups that she works with. So one was decoding, accelerated literacy, one's a homework support group, and then one is to support the GCSE. And we also offer the AQA Step Up to English as well. So there's another subgroup for that as well. Unfortunately, we just don't have the capacity to do one-to-one intervention with the students, but it is something that would be ideal.
The next question is from Sara C. It's about translanguaging, really. So it's kind of it's a question for all of our presenters. Does anyone train students how to do this? Who wants to go first? How you empower them, encourage them to use all of their languages. Sarah, do you want to try and say what you do?
For me, because, as I said, it's easier because all the students have French as their first language. So it's just a case of allowing them to use it as they need. So if they need to speak French, speak French. Obviously, there is a little bit of a danger that some students will rely totally on French in a lesson if you allow them to. So, you know, I will monitor the conversations and sort of go around and say, well, okay, you've heard the student next to you say something. Can you now repeat it in English? And do it like that, just to try and encourage it. But I try and leave it to their own discretion as far as possible, particularly with the younger students.
Tracy?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because to Sarah's question regarding the training, there is a whole program that you can, it's the Young Interpreter Scheme. It's very, very reasonable to purchase, so you can actually train your bilingual, multilingual students to become, you know, EAL ambassadors, so to speak. So they use their home language, and it's not about them sort of becoming mediators, translators, but you're training them with the skills to be able to communicate effectively using their home language. So yeah, that's the sure you know about it.
Yeah, it's ours. It came from us.
I think from you, Sarah. Yeah.
I am that
Yeah.
Sarah from Hampshire.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
it's really
Thank
good,
you.
isn't it? It's a very, very good program. Yes. What's the name of the lady that?
Astrid Deneen.
Yeah, Astrid. That's right.
Yeah,
That's who I'm in
she's our
contact
lead.
with. Who I'm familiar with. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic program. It really is, and it's very reasonable.
Leander and Sal.
So we
Talking
don't
about
really, yeah, we don't really train them, but we do just promote it. For example, I had one of my Band B students today. He's done an assessment, and halfway through, he announced to the entire class that half of his assessment was in English and half was in Portuguese. And I said, okay, that's fine. And no one batted an eyelid. So I think it's just that acceptance that they're using language one. And it is not a problem at all.
Yeah, can I just say, Graham, about we have developed in Hampshire a training program for students, and our bilingual staff are training them how to use various tools like the subtitles in YouTube and like Immersive Reader and other ICTs like that. So they get training on how to use those things for the Key Stage 3, the bite size and other websites and various bits of content. And it just seems to me that we used to try to leave it to chance. And in Hampshire, maybe because our kids are maybe perhaps more isolated than Sarah's example, where everybody spoke French, we've got lots and lots of languages and only ones and twos, and people weren't really making full use of their first languages, and the longer they spent in school, the more of their first languages they were losing. So they might come with skills, but by the time they left year 11, they no longer had those skills. So because we're also very keen that kids use their other languages and keep them going, yeah, we've developed now, well, we're training the kids how to do that as a support mechanism. So we empower them to take then those strategies and those ICTs into all their different lessons, and hopefully in that way they can more independently do the glossaries, the highlighting, the annotating, the translating things live on screen, all of those kinds of activities. And having shown it in a school to one, I think she might have been a history teacher. The teacher went away and then used some of these tools to translate all of the instructions into she had 4 different languages in her class, including, and English on top, 5. She translated her lesson instructions. And when the kids came in, their eyes they were so surprised to see that she had done that for them. And she said that was a career moment for her, just that very simple thing, and so quick and easy to do these days. So yeah, this is what we're currently doing down in Hampshire with our kids as they come.
Thank you. There's a helpful comment from Amaji in the chat about organising pairs or trios to use their first language together. Sometimes I've done one of our courses, which we used to call plurilingualism, and now I think it's called Learning in Multilingual Classrooms, had a fantastic assignment recently from a teacher in Swansea, who went in some detail through how she scaffolds things for Ukrainian students doing English literature GCSE. So as well as where possible getting translations of texts, there is a point where they are asked to sit together and discuss. That's really about making sure that they all understand what's going on and what they're going to do. And then they might be moved into different groups where they are hearing fluent English speakers talking about the books that they're reading. So they get both languages in the lesson. We have got one more question before we start, which is the intervention question. When do people, I'm sorry, I don't know what step up to English is, but it says, when do pupils have step up to English intervention? Are they withdrawn from lessons? So I suppose that's really a question about the extent of withdrawal. Sarah, I think your answer to that will be fairly straightforward.
Which Sarah?
Sorry, Sarah in Brest.
For us, no, they're not withdrawn from any lessons.
Yeah.
No, doesn't happen.
Tracy?
Yes, for absolute beginners, they're removed from mainstream lessons just once or twice a day, depending on their language proficiency. But absolute beginners, so during English, we bring them out, but we're sort of pre-teaching. Depends on what, it's very difficult, isn't it? It all depends on what stage of their language acquisition they're at. But absolute beginners, it's settling them, isn't it? And finding out what they know and then connecting and sort of activating that knowledge and providing new information. So yeah, it all depends on what stage they're at with their language acquisition, English language acquisition.
Thanks. And Leander and Sal, I think I did see an intervention when I visited you. I'll explain a bit about that.
Yeah, so in terms of the question, the step up interventions, we do withdraw the year 11s from their lessons. And they do, again, 2 hours a week, but they only do that for the 6 weeks prior to actually taking the step up exam, because otherwise they're losing a lot of curriculum content. So that'll be 12 lessons where they're looking at decoding, they're looking at comprehension, they're looking at reading skills, they're looking at past papers, and doing practice papers. And then after those 6 weeks of 2 hourly interventions, we then sit them down, do the step up to English exam, and then send them back into mainstream.
Okay, thank you. I think Rebecca's kindly put the Ukrainian case study in the chat, so you can read that for yourselves. So I think we do finish at 5:15 and it's 5:14. So I want to thank very sincerely all 4 of our presenters. They're very different schools, very different circumstances, but they're all doing really exciting things that are making a big difference. And thank you, those of you who are here, for coming, and thank you to those of you who will be viewing it online at some point next week. If you do have any other questions, do please send them to us, and we'll try and get some answers to you. So I think it's goodbye from me and all of our presenters and Chiaka, our other interviewer. So thanks for coming.